Alright, this week feels like one of those moments where the AI industry stops being about models and starts being about control. Control of distribution, control of pricing, control of where we actually work and where the work happens. Because if you look at all of these stories together, they're not isolated. They're all pointing in the same direction. Let's start with SpaceX. So, SpaceX just announced that it has the option to acquire Cursor for $60 billion or pay $10 billion just to collaborate in the meantime. And if you're not deep into the dev world, Cursor might sound like just another AI tool, but it's not. Cursor is basically a fork of VS Code and AI deeply integrated into it. And in just 2 years, it embedded itself into the workflow of some of the most important engineering teams in the world. We're talking companies like Nvidia and Google. So the question is, why would SpaceX want this? Because it isn't just about buying a model, this is about buying the interface where work actually happens. For years, everyone thought the AI race was about who builds the smartest model, but now we're seeing something really different. Models are converging. Everyone is getting good. So the real advantage shift is to distribution. Who owns the place where users spend 8 hours a day? And for engineers, that place is either code editor. So what Elon is doing here is actually very strategic. He didn't buy a competitor to Claude or ChatGPT. He bought the place where developers live. And once you control that layer, you control how AI gets used. That's the real power move. Now, let's talk about something that sounds contradictory, but actually isn't. Google is investing up to $40 billion in Anthropic, which is one of its biggest competitors. And at first, this feels really strange because Google already has Gemini. It has its own chips, its own cloud, its own distribution through products like Gmail, Docs, Android. So why invest in a rival? Because Google is playing a different game. It's not trying to bet on one winner. It's buying on exposure to all of them. Think about it. Amazon is already backing Anthropic. Now Google doubles down. At the same time, Google continues to build its own models. So no matter who wins, Google is involved. And this is actually a classic Silicon Valley strategy. You build your own product and you invest in your competitors because the risk isn't losing the race. The risk is being left out of it. And there's another signal here. Anthropic is now generating over $30 billion in annualized revenue. That's not experimentation anymore, guys. That's enterprise scale, which means the real battle is not consumer AI, it's enterprise adoption. And Google knows that. So instead of trying to beat Anthropic directly, it participates in its own growth. That is not a contradiction. That is strategic positioning. Now let's move to OpenAI. They just launched GPT 5.5, and what's interesting is not just the model itself, it's what they choose to emphasize. Because for the first time, the focus is not on chat, it's on work, execution, agents. They also updated Codex, turning it into more of a workspace than just a coding assistant. So instead of helping you write code, it actually helps you operate across tools, browsers, spreadsheet, presentations, automation. And that shift matters because it confirms something that we've been seeing across the industry. Chat is no longer the center of AI. Agents are. The question is no longer, can the AI respond? We know that already. The question is, can the AI do the job? And OpenAI needed this shift because they've been losing ground in enterprise to Anthropic. Claude Code has already integrated deeply into developer workflows. So GPT 5.5 feels like a response, a repositioning, moving away from personality and conversation towards execution and productivity. But the big question is timing, because once a tool is embedded into workflows, it's very hard to displace. So even if GPT 5.5 is better, that doesn't automatically mean it wins. Adoption inertia is real. Now, this next story might be one of the most important of today, and also one of the most underestimated. Moonshot AI just released Kimi K2.6, an open source model with 1 trillion parameters. And what makes it different is not just size, it's what it can do. It can coordinate up to 300 sub-agents, handle thousands of steps simultaneously, run tasks that last over 12 hours. This is not a chatbot, this is a system. And here's the part that changes everything. It's cheap, extremely cheap, less than $1 per million tokens for frontier models. So now you have something that's close in capability, but dramatically cheaper and fully open. That breaks the old narrative. For a long time, people said open source AI was always 2 years behind, but that is no longer true. The gap is shrinking fast, and for companies, this creates a new option. Instead of paying for expensive APIs, they can build their own systems on top of open models, which means more control, more customization, lower costs, and once that becomes viable, the pricing pressure on closed models increases immediately. And that leads perfectly into the last story of today. DeepSeek just released V4, and this might be one of the clearest signals in the market right now because performance-wise, it's very close to the top models. We're talking near state of the art, but the price about 1/6 of competitors. And that's not a small difference. That's a structural shift because now the question becomes, how do companies justify charging 6 times more if the performance gap is small and the cost difference is massive? The pressure builds fast. And this is the second time DeepSeek has done this. They're not just competing on capability, they're setting the price ceiling for the entire industry. And once that happens, everyone else has to respond. So what we're seeing is a new dynamic. Chinese models are not just catching up, they're shaping pricing. And that's incredibly important because in the long run, price market wins, not just performance. If you zoom out across all of these stories, the pattern becomes very clear. The AI race is no longer about building the smartest model. It's about 3 things: distribution, pricing, execution. SpaceX is buying the interface of the work. Google is buying exposure across the ecosystem. OpenAI is shifting from chats to agents. Open source is closing the gap faster than ever expected. And China is redefining how cheap intelligence can really be. So the question is no longer who has the best AI. The question is who controls how AI gets used, because that's where the real power is. And that's the battle we're watching right now.